The Great American Read just took us to other worlds, introduced us to other environments, helped us understand who we are a little bit better by looking at the world around us. But what about the world right here in Texas? We're going to find out right now on our own book club, Cover to Cover. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse, and welcome to Cover, our own little book club here to follow the Great American Read. We loved hearing what the nation picked as their favorite books when it came to other worlds. What are yours? You can join our conversation at #CoverToCover. But right now I'd like to introduce to you the people we've brought together to talk about that very topic. Starting off, we have the Pushcart Prize winning author, Daniel Pena. Welcome.
Thank you.
Daniel's here, but also Charlie Meschling. You may recognize him from Straight No Chaser. So I hope he has a place to take us in other worlds. Also, the author of The Other Side and the brand new The Reckoning, we have Lacey M. Johnson. Welcome, Lacey.
Thank you.
And to finish off our pile of people, we have poet, actress, and educator. It is Jasmine Mendez. Hello, Jasmine. Okay, folks, fantasy books, otherworldly books, science fiction books. What is it you love most about this category? I'll start with you, Daniel.
You know, for me, like other worlds, and I think about like those categories is all about, as much as we can talk about the context of other worlds, it's all about talking about the multitudes that we have within ourselves and the way in which that's reflected in sort of, you know, the larger landscape. And so for me, as much as it's about sort of like, you know, the novelty of like, oh, the Yogi Boogie or the what's outside, it's a lot about sort of introspection. Yeah. And for me, that's what the context of other worlds is.
So Jasmine, am I limiting myself talking about science fiction and all of this? Can we have other worlds in our world?
I definitely think so. That's kind of where I was gearing towards with other worlds, more of like the dystopias, which can have some sci-fi fantasy elements, but they're kind of like looking at our world and turning it on its head, or looking at the extreme, like grotesque of what we could become, you know, if we, you know, go X, Y, or Z kind of path. And so for me, like, it was very much like dystopia. That's what an other world
Lacey,
is.
how about for you? How are you looking at this topic?
I think I'm with Jasmine. I was thinking about it in terms of I think the far-flung world, the world that looks really different from ours, is easily classifiable as another world, but the one that looks like ours but just turned slightly, I think what those kinds of stories allows us to do is it's a sort of lens that puts our own world into focus.
Charlie, what world are you in?
Well, I mean, I thought about this a lot while we were preparing for this, and
so you prepared for this?
Well, I mean,
well, then we're in trouble.
As much as I ever prepare, so don't expect too much. But I mean, yeah, what does other worlds mean? I mean, I think it's just the way you think, the way we think, put in another place, another time, another country, even within our time, is another world. Because to me, that it's nice to see a character think the same way as I do, even though they're in a completely different situation. It kind of humanizes everything and reminds us that we're all the same in a way, no matter where we are or where we were born or what time or what dystopia or whatnot.
So let me throw this out to all of you then, and whoever wants to go with it, go for it. But then, so when we're reading these kind of books, are we learning about humanity and other people, or do you read them to learn about yourself, how you would react in those situations? Does it help you define yourself better?
Are those things mutually exclusive?
Don't have to be.
That's what I was thinking.
They are when I ask the question, but in reality.
I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think that any kind of story allows us to enter the experience of another person. It fosters empathy. It helps us understand humanity in that way. But as we're understanding humanity, we're always in the process of also kind of understanding our place within humanity and within the world.
Mm-hmm. As an author, they always say, write what you know. But when we're in a category of other worlds, we're writing what we don't know, but we have to learn about it as a writer. How do you make it feel true?
How's that? Okay, that's me.
Yeah, that's going right toward you. I know you're a poet, but we'll go with it.
No, I think that we use, our experiences as humans and as people and imagine. I think it's all about the imagination and what we can imagine something different to be, whether it's like one extreme or the other, to create that world. Even in poetry, I'm constantly trying to create new worlds and new environments with like this imagination and like taking those risks to try something new.
So why poetry as opposed to novel writing or nonfiction?
Novel writing just seems like a lot of work.
Over to the novel writers.
It's just, you have to create like characters with feelings and
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
settings.
So is novel writing a lot of work?
I think it's ultimately it's about characters acting and reacting to different stimulus. So like in the context of other worlds, it's about creating not only just the entire world, but creating a character that is fully three-dimensional. That when we read because we want not only to sort of discover something about ourselves, but discover these big questions that like always where does dignity come from? What is love? These things like that. And so for me, like part of the labor of creating a novel is seeing the full spectrum of humanity and all of its sort of like darkness, but also all of its light.
But even if you're writing about a place that people are familiar with, don't you have to use the same discipline as though when you're writing about places people don't know, that you have to create it on the page even if it exists in real life?
I think for me, it's always about going back to sort of how characters act and react to different stimulus. When you put them in uncomfortable like situations, like that's an entire, that's what a novel is. You're constantly making the characters adjust and react, and hopefully it tells us something about our humanity.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie, when you present a song, when you sing a song and tell a story that way, are you putting yourself in another world?
Yeah, well, you're putting yourself into that character, where whatever that character is. In the same way when you read a book, you kind of in your mind put yourself into that character. It's just, instead of internalizing it, it's just externalizing it, really.
Yeah. Okay, in this whole genre, where have we seen some successes and where have we seen some authors that have missed the mark? Anyone want to call anyone out? Oh, Lacey's like, I don't know if I should say anything.
Trying to think. There are certain, novels that I love, that I return to again and again. The Handmaid's Tale, for one. The Left Hand of Darkness, Ursula Le Guin, Octavia Butler. I think they really do a great job. And the ones that miss the mark, I don't read.
So you're not going to give any tales out of school about who they are?
No, I give them 50 pages, and if they don't have me, then, life is short.
So what is it that makes a good book for you then? When you're reading, what is it that lets you know this is a book not only worth finishing, but coming back to time and time again? What is it that you look for?
For me as a poet, it's very much so about like the language, and is the language there, is it captivating? Do I want to read 6 pages of a setting description based on like the words that are used, metaphors, similes, just the description, the imagery, and then are there characters, again, that I can empathize with or that share something similar to my journey or my story, or that is different but that I can learn from it in some way? Am I connected to the story? Like at the end of the book, am I just like, oh, I don't want this to end, I want to stay with this character forever? I think that creating those very believable human or non-human characters, but that have something that resemble what we carry within ourselves, really makes me want to stick with the book.
Charlie?
Well, it's just got to be compelling. It's got to be enough to make you sit down and read. I've got two young boys that are going to be up at 5:30 in the morning. Is it enough to keep me up till 11:30 at night, or 12, or then 12:30, where I know I'm going to regret the next day, but I can't put it down? That's just got to be a gauge.
Okay, over here, what brings you folks back?
For me, it's the texture of the book, and it's weird because I feel like the narrative is important, and I always tell my students, like the character is queen. He has to have this sort of we read books because of characters, but for me, texture is like I'm the guy that reads the 6 pages of the texture is like, do I need this description of it? To this end, like one of these books that I'm really big on right now is this guy named Clemens Meyer. The book is called Bricks and Mortar, which is this incredible sort of breakdown of the fall of Eastern Germany and the way in which East Germans reacted to basically the infusion of capitalism to the fabric. And it's nothing but like, it's the thing is so just texture heavy, and I love that. Yeah.
So for me, I think it's a book that's successful allows me to think about the world in a way I haven't before, or to see something in a new way. It's going to teach me something about not necessarily just myself, but a new way of thinking about the world.
Mm-hmm. As the world becomes a smaller place, as we become more global, does that make it harder to take people to another place? Does it make it harder to write that universal story that people can enjoy no matter what their background is? And is that something you think about?
That's a great question. I mean,
well, they're good. Let's stop the show right there. Thank you all for coming. I finally found one.
I mean, it's just like it's interesting because we're at a time where it's like, I mean, talking about getting heavy, where we're instantly, so hyper-connected, but then so disconnected. And so I think, weirdly enough, like the new frontier is like going back to what does it mean to be human, and respecting the humanity in other people, and like going back to those big questions, right? Which I think the best of literature does. Where does dignity come from? What does it mean to be a human in the 21st century fabric? And I think, I don't think it's as hard anymore, or rather, it is harder because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree that it's harder right now to have an appetite for fiction, for me, simply because I'm so concerned about the world that we do live in. It's hard to care about one that doesn't exist, except in our imagination. And so, as a writer of nonfiction, I read a lot of nonfiction, but that's not to say that novels aren't important and don't have a place in the here and now. I think as I was rereading the novel that I'm going to discuss later, I was just thinking about how much urgency there is in us imagining other possibilities of ways of interacting with one another, and ways of configuring ourselves as groups of humans.
So our favorite part of the show right now, let's find out what our panel likes to read and what are their favorite books in the category. Charlie, what's your book?
The book I chose is Stephen King's The Gunslinger. And as I was thinking about this genre, there were a lot of things that came to mind, and that's one book that I always come back to and think about, and I hadn't read it in such a long time. It was a really fun thing to go back to, because I'm at a way different point in my life than I was the first time I read it even. It's a great book where the protagonist isn't necessarily good or bad. He's not a hero, he's not a villain, he's somewhere in the middle, and he doesn't know where he is, or doesn't care, which is, I think,
and
really
better than other
interesting.
Stephen King books for you, different than other Stephen King
I
books.
think so. I think it's a lot more introspective than a lot of Stephen King books. I don't like horror movies or the horror genre, but this book is it's just totally different than that, and it's really interesting to me to read.
Speaking of reading it, you want to read us a part?
Yes.
Take us in. Let us hear it.
I am an e-reader.
Oh, okay. Our modern reader on the panel.
But I will do a short. He sucked in the white-hot air into his lungs and hung his head for a moment. When he raised it again, he saw it wasn't the man in black, but a boy with sun-bleached hair, regarding him with eyes that did not even seem interested. The gunslinger stared at him blankly and then shook his head in negation. But the boy survived his refusal to believe. He was a strong delusion. One wearing blue jeans with a patch on one knee and a plain brown shirt of rough weave.
So what is it about that you like?
I love how egocentric the character is written, that he's so wrapped up in just his own mission, his own life's mission, that he can't even fathom that something in front of him may not be created by his own mind. That other being doesn't have its own egocentricity. Like it's very different than the way I think, and I think most people think, not everyone, but I just thought it was fascinating.
So
just
Charlie is
stuck
not egocentric. We're saying.
Not to
Lacey.
the point that I don't believe that you all are existing right now.
Lacey, your turn.
So I am recommending The Handmaid's Tale, which probably a lot of viewers are familiar with from the Hulu series, but I think it's really interesting to return to the original text, which is, if you're not familiar with the Hulu series, is about a sort of alternative United States where a group of religious militarized zealots have taken over the government and have more or less enslaved all the fertile women and forced them to procreate with the generals and commanders.
What I kind of really love about the book is, when was it written originally?
Oh my goodness, I feel like it was in the 70s.
But yet it's so relevant even today that it continues
really
to have that
is.
staying power, which I think is
Yeah.
a sign to a wonderful book.
Oh, sorry, I don't actually know when it was originally. Anyway, yeah, it's
so
still
it's been
relevant
written a little
today.
while ago.
I mean, when I first read it, I was in college, I think, and thinking it, I was taking feminist studies and reading this and reading it as an interesting feminist critique of a possible future. And now when I read it, it feels like a speculative documentary. It feels very close and painful almost to kind of read this book now, but also fascinating in the way that it explores how slippery agency and freedom and how fragile autonomy can be.
All right, since we're so many of us familiar with it from the motion picture and the series, how about the words themselves?
Sure. It was after the catastrophe when they shot the president and machine-gunned the Congress and the army declared a state of emergency. They blamed it on the Islamic fanatics at the time. "Keep calm," they said on television. "Everything is under control." I was stunned. Everyone was, I know that. It was hard to believe, the entire government gone like that. How did they get in? How did it happen? That was when they suspended the Constitution. They said it would be temporary. There wasn't even any rioting in the streets. People stayed home at night, watching television, looking for some direction. There wasn't even an enemy you could put your finger on. "Look out," said Moira to me over the phone. "Here it comes." "Here what comes?" I said.
Very nice. Okay, Jasmine, your turn.
Goodness. So I chose a book that most people probably don't know about, but I came upon it on my own research for my next poetry collection. It's called Massacre River by René Philoctet. He was a Haitian writer, and it's historical fiction based on the attempted genocide of Haitians along the northwestern Dominican border of Dominican and Haiti during the Trujillo era, which was a dictatorship in the Dominican Republic for over 30 years. But what's really great, I think, about this book is that the author imagines this historical event with a lot of magical realism, a lot of details that are very wild and surprising, heads that are getting cut off that suddenly talk to you and taunt you, a bus that has like 3 chapters of a monologue where you like are personifying the bus and you are the bus and you hear the bus talking and getting angry with the passengers and coughing up smoke and all these sort of things. And so it's a really fascinating sort of take on this historical event, this very traumatic and awful experience that happened in 1937 along the Haitian-Dominican border. But it's also really, it's about a love story. So Pedro and Adele are in love. Adele is Haitian, Pedro is Dominican, and he's like trying to fight for his woman to like survive and to be saved. And as he's trying to prepare her to like flee the border, she ends up being massacred, and he sees it, and then like her head comes to life. I mean, it's just very like.
Okay. Read.
Sorry, there's a lot going on there. So I'm just going to read a section here.
I'm very curious what you're going to read after that
No.
setup.
This is words have birth certificates and death certificates too. We have coupled joy with laughter, steeples with cloudless skies, awakening with sunshine, and work with eager hands. Throughout our great linguistic age, we have linked intelligence with light, youth with generosity, change with revolution, and hope with harvest time. We have found the highest physical expression of mankind in dance and spiritual transcendence in love. We have built houses for protection, discovered medicines for health, worked the land for nourishment. And to guide the human mind, we have words that express our needs, bread for hunger, culture for understanding, poetry for beauty. Words that translate our feelings, dusty towards our country, the worship of God, the love of art, just as we have created words for the shame of humanity, lies, envy, hatred, treachery, rape, tyranny, as a weapon against the border people. Rafael Leonidas Trujillo suggested perejil.
Nice. Love the wordplay. And Daniel, you get to take us home.
Yeah, so I chose The Movies of My Life by Alberto Fuguet, who is a Chilean writer, founder of the Macondo movement, which is sort of like the anti-magical realism movement in Latin America. But what I love about him is that like he enters sort of reality with sort of a touch of the absurd, which is, I think, is like a really interesting sort of keyhole into sort of other worlds that sort of exist within the world we already know. And so it's about a seismologist named Beltran Soler, who essentially is on a flight, a seismology conference rather, from Santiago, Chile to Tokyo, and by sort of a chance meeting, realizes that sort of in his connecting flight in LAX, that this woman sort of catalyzes this sort of unpacking of his life through the movies that he's seen. And so I'm going to read a little bit here that's about sort of his him coming back to Los Angeles. It's best to arrive in Los Angeles at night. If you get there during the day, it's too easy to see the truth. The city doesn't have angels, dreams, or stars. But if you arrive at night, the idea of sleeping vanishes, no matter how tired you are, and you feel, if only for a moment, privileged. You feel that it's not just by chance that you're here, where movies are born. It's even less advisable to arrive at dawn. You touch down at night, full of faith, and by the time you leave the terminal, the sun is in your eyes, along with the feeling that someone's cheated you. Before, I've always touched down at LAX prior to getting connecting flights to Tokyo, Vancouver, San Jose, or Phoenix during the daytime, at that ugly hour of dawn when the mist coming off the sea won't even let you see the smoldering sun. But this time, we landed at night, and the city seduced me, not so much with what I saw through the window, but rather what I remembered.
Wow, nice. So those were their favorite books. How about yours? You can share it on Twitter, #cover2cover, and let us know what you think, or if one of these is one of your favorites now. Now that all the literary and important things are done, it's time to play a game. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, many of you have heard of HQ. Well, it's time for LQ, your literary quotient. And all of our panel have their boards in front of them. Remember, answer these questions. First question, let's see how you do. In this famous novel from a series of 7 books, it has a lion and witches and a group of 4 adventurers in a foreign land. Is it The Hobbit, The Wizard of Oz, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Golden Girls? Okay. Oh, we see somebody started one and then Okay, what do we got here?
Giving the title.
Anyway, you've all got it right. You all knew it. I thought I would throw you with The Lion and the Witches. It had to be The Wizard of Oz, but that had 13 books. I'm sure that's what gave it away. Okay, next question. Ready to go again?
Yeah.
Which article of clothing did Harry Potter sneak to Dobby in order to free him? Was it a shoe, a glove, a hat, or a sock? I can see what people are writing, and I love it when they write before they know. Sock, shoe, sock, hat. 2 of you have it right, so 2 of you obviously have it wrong. It was the sock. Okay, let's see. One more. You ready for one more?
Yes.
I like this one.
Yeah.
Which of the following books shares with the reader exactly one day in the life of a British socialite? Is it Mrs. Fletcher, Dear Mrs. Bird, Mrs. Osmond, or Mrs. Dalloway?
Is that right?
These 2 just wait for you 2 to finish.
Yeah.
And oh, Charlie. Okay, we're gonna do one more so Charlie has a better chance.
Was it Miss Dalloway?
I've gotten 2 right.
Oh, it was Dalloway. Yes, you did get it correct. Last question. Here we go. How many districts were there originally in the Hunger Games? Was it 12, 11, 13, or 21? Everyone's waiting for Charlie to say 21, 12, 13, 13. Once again, 2 got it right, 2 got it wrong. It was 13
close.
originally,
So close.
Yeah.
but when the revolution came, they got rid of the 1,
tried
and
to
then there was
fake my
only
way through
12,
that.
and then the Hunger Games came along. But you know what? The Hunger Games may have come along, but we've come to the end. That's it for Cover to Cover, but that's not it for the Great American Read. They're going to be back next week when they announce America's favorite book. Have you not voted yet? You can easily do it. Go to pbs.org and vote for your favorite book, or your local PBS station has a link. I want to thank our wonderful guests for joining us. I want to thank Daniel and Lacey for being here here with us. Thank you guys. I want to thank Jasmine and Charlie for also joining us.
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
to both of you guys. And I want to thank you for watching it. We hope you've had as much fun as we have. Remember to keep the conversation going, hashtag cover to cover. For all of us here at Houston Public Media, we want to thank the Houston Public Library for housing us. I'm Ernie Manouse. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.